I got to turn down my phone. Hi, Tanya. Habel or
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Cool. We can hear you just perfect. Is it Habel?
You did. Habel. You did say my name right.
Yes. I should have just gone with that, but I challenged myself and I thought that I was guessing wrong. This is going to be exciting. We've talked in the past about different things, but I so wanted to get you on the show to talk about Blue Death Feigning Beetles because they're so popular in the hobby, and breeding them has been a challenge for a long time. And you've broken the code, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Tanya, this is something that we do with all of our guests. We're going to talk reptiles. We're going to talk about insects. We're going to talk about all kinds of different things in the hobby on this show. But one thing that I really want to stress is let's talk about the person. Can you give our viewers a little bit of background about yourself and especially the Rodent Shed and where that originated and where that's going, if you don't mind?
So 16, 7, no, it's probably closer to 17, 18 years ago. My husband's cousin called us and she was like, I have 2 ball pythons I need to get rid of. We're moving out of state. I can't take them with, we all know the story. And she's, my husband's like, I'll ask my wife. He asked me. I said no, of course. Well, we got the snakes because, that's just how it goes. And, I was like, I'm not going to go to Madison every 2 weeks to get food for these guys because I live 45 minutes to an hour away. So I bought 10 mice and it kind of snowballed from there. I had some 10-gallon tanks sitting in the back of my basement, nothing fancy, bedding, hides, all that good stuff. And then my husband's like, we have too many mice. Can I have another snake? And then he's like, how about another one? Another one. I grew up to like 60-some snakes.
No.
I have a 14 by 20 shed in my backyard just dedicated to breeding rodents. That's all it does.
Wow.
I do mice, I do rats, I do African soft furs. Yep, just one of those snowball effects, I call it. Because I didn't want to drive to Madison, so let's get 10 mice.
I think that's how a lot of businesses start. That's certainly how our business started with Supreme Gecko. Started breeding animals, and then I had a few extra. So I started buying supplies, buying more animals, and I had bulk of things, and I just started selling what I was using. Same way with you. And I know the same way with many different breeders and businesses in this hobby. Very cool. So instead of a she shed, you have a rodent shed. That's pretty cool.
My dad used to call it the mouse house.
The mouse house.
I like that.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, way to go.
I like that.
And where are you selling your supplies, your rodents? Are you selling online? Are you selling at shows only?
So what I usually do is I do have some local people that buy from me. And then I do have a pet store that buys my extras. And then if people pre-order when I'm at a show, I'll bring it there, but I don't bring extras.
Okay.
I just do like pre-order kind of.
Perfect. It's hard. Anybody that does feeders at these reptile shows, it's got to be super hard. We tried to do it with crickets a long time ago. We tried to do it with mealworms. And it was one of those things where we were either, we didn't bring enough and we were always out, 10 minutes into the show, or we brought too much and then we came home and we had to somehow use 40,000 mealworms. It's a hard balancing act. So I give you a lot of credit for being able to make that all work for you. Very, very cool. What's in the future for the Rodent Shed?
We do plan to expand. So when we built our shed, we built it with a lean tube because we were going to just store stuff in there, like extra, like outside stuff. The plan is to actually lay down cement this year and actually add on, just because I'm selling out every month. So
wow. And sometimes that can be a problem because then you're out of stock and people are kind of expecting that. So that's that's a super hard balancing act. Brad is asking, do you offer frozen or live?
I try only to do frozen. I do have a couple of customers that like live, but I do tell them the downfalls of that. Because I don't want them to come back and be like, your rat killed my snake. So.
Oh my, that's a challenge.
Yeah, it is.
I'm just kind of reading some of the comments here. Somebody said something about the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. That's Frank. Instead of the Rodent Shed, you should call it the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. We'll talk to Mr. Disney about that. I guess you can't talk about it now, but
I don't know if I have the funding to buy that kind of name.
So lots of plans. That's super cool that you're taking this to the next level, and it's super cool that it's successful. Do you anticipate expanding your product line? Will you keep other things associated with what you're
I do breed my own mealworms. I do my own dubias. I do sell my extras, and usually whatever extras I have too many of, I just give Bill because they use them for the rescue and whatnot. I don't think so. Because I feel like my animals don't get the care they would need to if I went too big.
Good call. Good call. We all know your limit. Know how much resources you have and what your limit is. Good call. Way to go.
Because I feed the rodents a rodent diet, but then I also supplement with fresh greens, things from my garden. I buy them seeds. I buy them dried mealworms. Because I feel like it gives them a better variety. So I feel like I get better, healthier animals. I may not have the biggest or like the fattest, but I feel like I have a more muscle to them.
And it sounds like you're thinking about expanding the building. Are there going to be some possible issues with that, kind of limitations? How is that going to change your time?
I think what we want to do is just be able to have where I could grow some more out. One of the issues I run into is I don't have enough room to grow the jumbos, the X larges. I'm always fighting with the females trying to keep new bloods going. Like when they start to get too old, I need to start growing up bigger females, but then I forget to. So then I'm like, okay, I'm scrambling. I have no room to put these guys. So,
I've got to ask this, and this is a good segue into the Blue Death Feigning Beetles. How did that come around? You're focusing on the rodents, but you also have your hands in a couple of. How did you start keeping Blue Death Feigning Beetles? That's kind of interesting.
So we were doing an event for the Herb Society, and someone brought some Blue Death Beetles to the event for kids to look at. My daughter at the time, I think she was 8, 9, maybe not even that old. And she's like, I want those for Christmas.
Oh. Why?
So then, So then I reached out to a couple pet stores and Animal House in McGuanago. When Dan was still running it, he actually ordered some in for me for my daughter for Christmas. We got 6 of them.
Nice.
And then it just kind of, I kind of took them over because I thought they were cool. So,
how long ago was that?
She's 15 going on 16. So 8 years ago, maybe 8, 9.
Oh my. So at that time, and maybe they're still like this, but at that time they were super expensive, right?
They were.
So we're talking $20, $25 a piece?
I think I paid $20 a piece.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
For 6 of them, yeah. And they weren't around. So that's pretty cool that Dan had some, Animal House had some, and that you could find them. But at that time, they're really, wasn't the popularity of Blue Death Feigning Beetles at that time. So that's interesting that you could find them.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring them in, and well, I was going to ask about care, but let's kind of hold that for just a second. Let's talk about why you think Blue Death Feigning Beetles are so popular right now.
Do you have a picture of this?
I do. Let me go ahead and show a picture here.
In case somebody doesn't know, like me, what it looks like.
Yep. Let me do this. I can share my screen.
Wow.
Good call, Nanette. So this is a Blue Death Feigning Beetle.
And I think they're really popular just because if you look at them, like the coloration of them, they're actually really sturdy animals. Like, you're not going to squish them in your hand. Like if a kid kind of like puts his hand around them, because they have a really hard shell.
Okay.
And you know what? They don't bite. Like, you can't feel them nibbling on you. So
That's a plus.
You know, the ones that I have seen. Let me stop. Why are they called Blue Death Feigning Beetles?
So they produce like a waxy coating on the body to help block the sun for them, because they are from like the Southwest United States, Mexico area. So it's like almost like a sunscreen they rub on themselves, basically.
How big are they?
Angie is asking, how big are they?
Maybe about the size of thumbnail.
Okay.
Oh.
At least mine are.
A quarter size, about the size of a quarter-ish.
No, that's like a nickel.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it in the picture.
Oh, perfect. Hold on, let me get rid of
That's
this.
bigger than I thought it was then. Okay.
That is.
Yeah.
And why blue? We get the blue part.
Mm-hmm.
Death feigning. Why death feigning?
Because they like to fake like they're dead.
Hey, folks, look at this.
Oh.
So literally, that
you
looks
zoom that in?
exactly like a dead beetle.
Can you bring that in closer?
I cannot.
No,
I cannot.
okay.
For hers, I can't. Yeah, there you go. Look at that, folks.
Wow.
How long will it stay like that?
It all depends on the individual. I have some that they don't care, they won't faint. And I have other ones that can stay like that for like minutes, like 10 minutes.
Really?
So, yeah, it all depends on the individual.
Have you ever seen them and thought, oh, they're just playing dead, and then it's like, oh my, that's
I
2
have.
days.
And I've also, when they do pass sometimes, I'll take them out and I'll put them in a deli cup just to make sure they passed and I'm not accidentally getting rid of something I shouldn't be.
I know, a lot of these are coming in. I shouldn't say a lot of them are coming in, but when you see them coming in, they're like 99% from the wild-ish, you think about that?
Would say so.
Probably. And when they come in from the wild, because they're wild, you don't know the age. And I know this from experience with geckos coming in from the wild, but you don't know the age. And sometimes they're a little beat up, right? Maybe missing
a leg, missing an antenna.
And that's common. That just happens.
Interesting.
So obviously they don't regrow any parts of their body. I'm guessing. But
not that I've seen, but I'm not an expert. I'm just so.
I'm just looking at the chat. Nanette, if we have a message,
if there's a question or something,
star it.
Yep,
if it's
can't, you have the
well, you right here, you can go ahead and do that. I'm trying to think with the blue. You talked about the secretion. Does that? So if you hold them, does that come off? Is it like a powder?
I don't know. I've never actually noticed it on my hands. I don't actually hold them that often, to be honest.
Okay.
I kind of let them do the thing. I like watching them stumble around the cage. I do know, like, water can make them go black. Humidity, just the oils from your hands, like you're probably just rubbing them off. I do
interesting.
know, yeah, like
Well,
when you see them at shows a lot, half the time they're much darker just because they've been shipped in. And so just the rubbing and everything else wears it off of them. So
a little bit of stress,
mhm.
rubbing it off, they get a little bit darker. You bring them in, you set them up in your enclosure, and their blue comes back within maybe a couple of days ish.
I would say about a week.
A week, okay, cool.
Mhm.
Um, the other, and I might have mentioned this, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but how active they are is just incredible. The videos that I've seen on these, they're just all over the place, just running all the time, always running. Are yours the same way?
They're mostly active at like dawn and dusk. Just,
Okay.
because I think in the wild, the sun's so bright during the day that it could, you don't want to overstress your body. So during dusk and dawn, it's a little cooler,
Interesting. That's something that I never even thought about. I thought that they were just out all the time,
Mhm.
absorbing the heat, no concern, but more active, kind of, more crepuscular, more active during dawn and dusk. Very cool. Let's talk about, unless you have a question.
Frank says that the
Yeah.
larvae look similar to feeder mealworms, but are bigger and with a rounded tail instead of a pointed tail.
Yes, and we've got some great, Tanya's given us some great pictures here. We're
So
gonna
they're
talk
actually
about-
part of the same family.
yes, so very closely related to, the mealworm
He's
beetles.
bred them before, he said.
Tell us about their care. How hard are they to take care of? And while you do that, I'm going to see if I can find a picture here.
So I don't feel like they're super hard to take care of. I don't want to say they're like a bug you can, forget about. I do keep mine in like a Zilla Eco Earth kind of substrate, where a lot of people do keep theirs in sand. I do offer them fresh greens, like from oh my god, drew a blank on names of greens, like my turnip greens, my collard greens, things like that I feed my Russians. I'll just feed them like the fiberless part, just so they get some moisture. They do like a lot of protein in the diet, like dry bugs. Like I'll cut mealworms in half for them. I do offer them some dog food, just because I do have a dog, so he does have some dog food. I don't offer it a lot. I do vary their diet. Sometimes they do get some like fruit, not very often, just because the sugars isn't something they really need. They need more protein, I feel. A lot of people don't offer a water source. I kind of do. It's actually an old Pringle can lid that I taken off. I flipped it up, so it's not really deep, but I just put enough water in there so it's moistened that section.
I love that. I love that because immediately to my mind, we have lots of Periodora picta that we raise up, lots of babies. So what do I feed them? Well, I just take the top off of a deli cup and put it right in the enclosure, and then throw the mealworms right on top of there, and then the supplements. So they just jump right on the top. And it sounds and it looks so silly, but it works amazingly. So that top to the Pringles, just enough water in there that they're not going to drown, but they can jump if they want. They can jump in there and drink, or just come up to the edge. Really cool.
And I really don't see them actually ever drinking from that, but I feel better knowing it's there and they have that option.
It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt having it in there. Angie is asking, what about calcium?
So I don't actually offer them any sort of calcium. I mean, I feel they get most of what they need from the food, but I also do offer them like bug burger, leftover crusty food, things like that already has some vitamins in it.
Perfect. Frank has a comment here. They will readily take pre-killed feeders. So we're probably talking when Frank says feeders, he's probably talking like crickets or mealworms.
I've done mealworms. I've done dubias, things like that. So I pre-kill them. So
probably not the freeze dried. Like we
I
get.
do. I actually do offer that once in a while, just because I do have some.
Okay.
Mhm.
But then again, you're offering vegetables too, so they're
Mhm.
getting their moisture from the vegetables. You never missed, right? Because they're a desert.
I do on one section of the cage. Like I
Oh,
don't actually soak it, but if the worms need the moisture, they actually like for breeding purposes. You probably almost want like 1.5 to 2 inches of substrate, just so they can eat like they eat the decaying stuff like the worms and everything do in the bedding. So I like to keep one section a little bit moister than the other side, not like super soaked, just enough to that it's a little bit different, but not enough to make that big of a difference if they walk across it.
so that was probably something that you figured out, or you heard somebody say, for the worms,
Mhm.
keeping part of their enclosure a little bit more, I don't want to say humid, but damp,
Mhm.
so that the worms have more ability to absorb that moisture
Mhm.
and shed and grow and all. So you don't miss the adults enclosure at all. You offer the water, the food. I'm trying to think of any
Mhm.
other. How about temperatures?
Yep.
And I wanted to ask how long they live. Is this like a 2-3 year kind of thing?
They actually live quite a long time. I don't actually have a time frame because most of them all wild caught, so we don't know. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
because I have lost some throughout the years. Um, I lost my train of thought,
It'll
but
be interesting.
I don't feel like they only live a year. I feel like they live much longer than that.
It would seem like they would. I mean, the way that they're built with their armor and everything, I
Mhm.
don't know. I'm just guessing, I'm speculating, but it would seem like they would live a little bit longer than that. Lighting, temperature.
So my basement stays around 78, and that's where I keep them. So when my lights go off at night, it does dip down a little bit. They do like temperatures from like 75 and higher. My basement is naturally 78. It gets warmer in the summertime. Um, but when I do have worms and I'm growing them out, I do keep my worms a little warmer. Like if I find them, I'll actually keep those about 85.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think there's such a difference for the worms and the adults, the beetles?
Um, I feel like just because they are a desert, they are in the ground, they are where it's moist. The ground does naturally hold a lot of heat. And when I first started messing with them, I didn't know any better, so I kept them like I would keep my super worms.
Sure.
Like, so I grew them. I didn't know what I was doing, so I grew them up, and then like I kept feeding and watering. And I'm like, okay, these guys aren't doing anything. So then what I did is I put them in a cup with nothing in it. I don't have a worm right now. I just have a pupae. I don't know if you can see him. Kind of looks like a little alien.
Yes.
Mhm.
Um, so I kept them like individually separated, and I kept them like I was a superworm because I didn't know any better.
There you go. There's one of your pictures.
It is. That's my hand.
So is this
So
a go
I've
ahead.
noticed when they get to about 1.5 to 2 inch is the best luck to have them pupate.
So
I
about
think,
this
I
side.
think you had a question.
Yes, we did. Let me
Mhm.
go over there.
The larvae burrow.
I've got. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go up to that one first. So Stinky is saying, the larvae burrow? Sorry if I missed it. Does Tanya have?
Um,
Does Tanya have a preferred
Mix.
mix?
Not really. I just use Eco Earth or like a jungle mix.
Okay.
I just kind of like top the cage off. I don't actually do a full cleanup. Like I'll pick the dirty stuff out, whatnot. I do have like some moss in there because they don't eat like the decaying stuff in the cage. So
the adults don't eat the stuff in the cage.
the worms do. Like
the worms. Okay, I gotcha.
Mhm.
I'm going to jump back for a second because I'm thinking of these questions for the adults. I apologize, but
Yeah.
are they communal? Can you keep
They are.
males, females? Just keep them together.
I do. Yep. I have one cage that has probably about 6. It's like a 10-gallon. And they all just do their thing. I do have 2 black guys, though, just because they were mixed up in one of my orders. So I ordered more later on. And when they were given to me, they were all docked to begin with from shipping. And I didn't realize I got 2 black death beetles.
So do you think that they're the same species? I'm going to read this off because I don't pronounce this name that often, but Asbolus verrucosus. Asbolus verrucosus. Do you think that they're the same species, the black ones?
They look very similar. I'm not 100% sure. The only thing I've noticed is they're a little bit slimmer than the blue ones.
Interesting. It reminds me of buying fish when we used to go buy fish, at the wholesaler and looking at a whole tank of fish like rams, like gold rams, blue rams, and then finding some opistogram in there and going, there's 100 fish in here, but I just really want those 2 over there. The weirdos, the strange things. It's always been fun. Angie has.
Well, to be honest, when I was first getting into rodent breeding,
I
would go to a pet store and be like, "Can I go through your mice?"
Yes, absolutely. Angie has a question here. Would putting the heat pad underneath the enclosure be good for them?
It all depends on how warm your house gets. I just have mine on like a baker's rack. Again, my house, the basement says 78, but when the lights come on, it does get a little warmer, but when my lights go off, it does cool down a little bit. So they do get a radiance. Like if you keep your house lower than 75, I would definitely recommend a heat pad of some sort. You wouldn't have to set it super high. I would set it at like maybe 80 and see what that does.
I'm going to make you answer the question that I hate getting at a reptile show. And that's, you have geckos that need heat. Is it better to have the heat on top or the heat on bottom? And for me,
I always fear it's going to be per your situation.
Yes. That's so hard. For us talking about it, it makes sense because there's so many other different factors in there. But somebody hearing that, it's like, well, what do you mean my situation? And what do you mean by that? And then you can go on and talk in a half hour about the heat source and the animals that you're providing the heat for. So
like, what type of animal is it? Where is it located? Do you have a cage on below it? Do you have a cage atop of it?
What's your normal temperature in the day and the night? Yes, absolutely. Yep. Frank has a comment here. Temps 88 plus with steady humidity will help them pupate. Absolutely.
Correct. Yep.
This real quick here. So let's talk about, you know what? In fact, I'm going to hide this. I'm going to show something else just real quick. Bear with me here. I want to show another picture. There it is. I sorted these pictures beforehand, but for some reason, they're not sorting correctly now. So why do you keep rice in with your Blue Death Feigning Beetles?
So that's actually not one of my pictures. I did find that when I was looking to see if I could find some. It's actually from Bugs in Cyberspace.
Okay.
But that's what these eggs look like. So it looks like a little grain of rice.
Or if you're paranoid like me, it's a dwarf white that's gotten into your Blue Death Feigning Beetles because I do dwarf whites and other enclosures. Let me see if I can get a size comparison on this. I'm searching. I wish this would have sorted better. My apologies, but I'm not finding that other picture. No, there we go. Let me show you this. So that's 0.00000001 centimeter. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, when I was trying to find a picture of an egg, that's the only one I could come up across. So, and I thought that was very interesting.
And again, thank you, Peter Clausen, for providing this information. Any idea on how many eggs? I mean, are we talking about thousands of eggs and
I really don't think it's thousands. For the most part, I let my beaters do the thing. About every 6 months, I will kind of go through their enclosure with a strainer, and I will strain the bedding to make sure there's no dead chunks or anything like that. That's how I actually came across my first worms. I'm like, how did I get super worms in here? Because I didn't know that I was breeding. I didn't know what these were. I actually messaged Dan and been like, Dan, what are these?
Are you kidding? I look dumbfounded because I am. I would have thought, Tanya, that you would just let them, get to a certain size in their enclosure and then just hand pick them and put them away. And we're going to talk about the whole separation thing in just a second, but that's interesting that you sift these out of the substrate and pull them that way.
Only when they get to a certain size. Like if they're tiny, I would leave them in. Okay. You have to think if you don't have a big enough enclosure, the beaters will find these guys and they will eat them.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
So they they mealworms, they eat dead bugs. Like who says if that worm is small enough that they won't eat them?
Why wouldn't they?
If they're hungry enough, like
more protein.
Yeah.
So I guess I compare these to mealworms. It's kind of the same thing, as and you do too. You breed mealworms. So as you get beetles, you put them in the substrate for a while and then you pull them because the beetles are going to eat the eggs. And eventually, if the eggs hatch out to mealworms, they're probably going to eat the small mealworms as well. So
like I don't do it all the time. I only do it about every 6 months.
Okay.
But if you have enough substrate, the worm should be able to be away. But I feel like I can catch the worms faster before. But again, I don't want to disturb their habitats too much either. So
you've got these worms, you've pulled out these thousands of worms. I'm just kidding. You've pulled out a bunch of worms. And what do you do with them? And tell us why you do this.
So I put them in a smaller cup. If they're smaller, I will actually put some bedding with them. And I think I have dog food in this picture. Yes, I do. I have dog food in this picture. Just so they have something to eat. And as they grow, I might give them a bigger cup. But once they get to that certain size, I will actually put them in a separate cup with no food, no water, nothing.
I've got another picture here I've got to show. And is the substrate, is it moist at all? Or
one is, yes.
Okay. And you've got a little bit of food in here, something for them to keep going. So you're pulling them at about 2 inches. How long before they pupate? And why are you separating them?
I'm not really sure. I was just treating them like I would a superworm.
Okay, perfect.
Because that's what they look like to me. So
that makes all the sense in the world. And I know superworms have to be separated because I don't know if they predate on each other, but I know for sure that they don't then turn into beetles if you have them all together. That they have to be separated. They cause each other to not go through that final stage.
Yep.
Why do you put it in a cup without substrate once it gets to a certain size?
How?
Why?
Why?
I feel I feel like I need to put them underneath a little bit of stress just to make them pupate.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. How long before? So you'll take them out of these cups and then you'll put them into a bear cup.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take?
Anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you still feed, or you stop?
I don't.
Feeding?
Nope. I
Is
don't
that
feed.
what kind of makes you think that that's what makes them?
I kind of feel like it does.
Okay.
I would say I probably have not greatest success, but like a 75% success on actually getting them to go.
Okay.
I mean, I only get like maybe 8 worms at a time. Again, I'm not an expert. I just enjoy the hobby, so.
Well, and I'm going to be very honest, Tanya. I'm going to say there's probably not but a handful of people that are really breeding these death feigning beetles. Would you agree? And I know people have tried.
It's hard to find people that would actually have the correct information out there saying how to take care of them.
And I think that this is all new within the last 5 or 6 years. I'm sure that we're breeding them before that, but from a hobby standpoint, a lot of people were trying to breed these and being very unsuccessful. It wasn't until about the last 5 years or so that the information is kind of collected in pieces, and this puzzle has been put together in my mind. So when you say you're not an expert, I'll say again, there's probably not 5 to 10 people in the country that are breeding these. So hats off to you for doing this. This is exciting to talk about this. So from here to pupate, once they form the larvae, how long in that form in the cycle are they until they become a beetle?
I actually have that information downstairs. I don't actually have it on me. I would say probably only a couple weeks. I've actually have more detailed notes downstairs in my notebook where I scratch everything down. I didn't bring that up here. I do apologize.
No, I'm the same way. Everything's in a spreadsheet. So when somebody says, how long for the Cerdodactylus papilionitis to hatch out from when you found them till hatching out, how long was it? Was it like 2 months, 3, 4? It's like, I don't know. It's all in a spreadsheet. Give me 5 minutes.
I would say this guy right here, he's not dark yet. He's been in here. I'm putting him on my hand. He's been in the cup for about a week like this now. He hasn't started to darken up yet. So I say he probably has a good week left to go. He will slowly start to turn brown. And then, when they do fully pupate, come out of pupate form to a beta, they're actually brown.
Well, I just happen to have a picture that you shared with us. How about that, folks? So they're hatching out. So again, my mind goes right over to mealworms. Mealworms don't stay in the pupa stage for very long. They hatch out fairly quick, a couple of weeks or so. I'd have to go to a spreadsheet to say for sure how long, but they come out like this brownish, and then they blacken up pretty quick. Very cool.
I would say it takes usually about 3 to 5 days for you to start to see any type of blue coating on them.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow, that's surprising.
And I would say almost 2 weeks for them to be fully blue.
Do they grow in size from hatching size?
I have not noticed that. No.
This is fascinating. Okay. I'm going to jump back one step. Any special care with the pupa? Do you have to do anything, special with them?
So the last one I had, I don't think I had the humidity high enough, just because it is wintertime, and his shell's just a little messed up. kind of like if you have your mealworms and when they go to the betas. So if you'll see, that one, he's just beginning to turn blue.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's cool looking.
Raising mealworms, I've talked to a number of different people about the whole mealworm process. And a good friend of ours, Justin from Midwest Mealworms. Hey, Justin, my pupa are all dying. Last few times I've had huge success rates, 80, 90% hatch rate. And this group seems to be about 50%. And his response was, well, it's probably your worms. And I thought, well, you mean when the worms start pupating, I did something different? He said, well, you probably weren't watering your worms. And I thought back and I thought, yeah, I had a whole pan that I was waiting for them to turn into pupa, and I kind of just left them alone because I thought there's no reason for me to water, with vegetables or anything, because they're right. I've started to see some pupa, so I'll just leave them alone. Well, it turns out that the worms going into pupa stage need that water and moisture way more than them growing up so that they can turn. And then if you don't, the pupa die off really, really bad, in my experience with mealworms.
I know it's with my mealworms. So I keep my mealworms and my dubias in my back basement room where I started doing my whole mice. Now I just got my bugs back there. Once they start to turn into pupae, I actually bring them out and I put them in my reptile room because it's a higher humidity and they don't have the messed up shells. But if I leave them in the back, I get messed up shells.
Interesting.
And literally, it's only 10, 15 feet difference.
Yeah. But that whole humidity thing is such a factor. We think in terms of these beetles and the mealworms, and I talk about Blue Death Feigning Beetles, and I also talk about mealworms, and we think in terms of more temperature than we do, at least I do in my mind, until, trying some breeding in bigger terms. And then you start thinking about the humidity and the water source before they pupa. It's crazy. We're talking about bugs here. We're talking about bugs. But then once you start going from 80% hatch rate or good-looking beetles to 50%, then you start thinking about, well, what went wrong, right?
Frank said that if they don't have enough moisture in their body, the higher risk of die off and deformities.
There it is. Exactly. And that's exactly from a mealworm standpoint, and I think you're confirming with the Blue Death Feigning Beetles the same thing. Interesting. When they hatch out, are they susceptible? I mean, are you putting them right in with the other Blue Death Feigning Beetles? Are they like, oh my gosh, here's a new one?
So I will actually keep them in a deli cup for a day or two just to make sure that they're okay, everything's going how it's supposed to be. And then I'll just put them in another tank. I'll put them where the food is so they know where the food is. But other than that, they just go in the tank.
Excellent.
So
that makes all the sense in the world.
I do know, I don't want to call it quarantine because it's not like I keep my beetles in a different room. This weekend I did pick up a couple more just to get some more bloodlines, whatnot going, as I'm talking about bugs, right?
I saw that. I saw it for that, 12 seconds that we were able to talk. I saw your cup with 3 Blue Death Feigning Beetles.
Yep, I have some right here. Nothing fancy. I just want to make sure they're okay, they're eating, they're doing all the buggy kind of things they're supposed to be. This is actually pretty dry. This is just some sphagnum moss. It's not moist or anything like that. But yeah, I just don't want, maybe they have a fungus on them and they're just going to die in 2 days or something, anything like that. So I feel if I keep them separated for a little bit, that I'm making sure everybody else is going to be okay. And I don't recommend them keeping them in a small container like this. I would totally put them in a bigger one once you're comfortable. So
I would have never have thought about doing that, about quarantining, because you're quarantining
mhm.
blue death feigning beetles or other insects. And now that you're saying this, I wonder how many people do my isopod colony is down to about 15. I better bring in some new blood and buy some, a 10 count or 12 count and dump it right into their existing container.
Mhm.
Something in the reptile
Yeah.
hobby we talk about
Yeah.
just insanely about never, ever, ever doing something like that. That's funny.
Well, and like sometimes, like if I get a different brand of like topsoil, anything like that, I'll only add a couple of things into it before I put the whole new colony into it, because it may not have anything in it. But what happens if there's something in it that it got sprayed by something and I didn't know it,
Yes.
and I just lost everything?
Gone. Just and then you go, yep, I should have done it that way.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get to yours, John, in just a second. Angie is saying, how long do you quarantine them for?
Just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy like I would like any snakes or anything I bring home. When I bring a new snake home, he is in quarantine at least 3 months to 6 months. They live on my kitchen counter. But
we do, reptiles for a month just to make sure. But I think the bigger the animal, the more you want to watch things like that.
Mhm.
John Doe is saying smart thing is they're wild caught. You never know. Isopods aren't wild caught, so not a big deal. I would beg to differ a little bit there in that's a good point. Isopods aren't wild caught, but everybody does isopods. Everybody does their animals differently. So, I don't think we've ever introduced, to one of our colonies new animals of the same species. But now that you say that, I will quarantine before putting them right in, because we don't know what other people are doing. Mites. Do I know that the isopod breeder that I just got these isopods from doesn't have mites? I don't know.
Mhm.
So while it's not as big of a deal as bringing in wild caught, there's still some concern there. But good point. Frank is saying, let's see if I can read this. Do you think $46 is an acceptable price point for captive bred individuals, considering the guaranteed lifespan and time and effort for raising? I want to have fair pricing in the far future. $46 an animal as opposed to about 25 for captive over wild caught. What are your thoughts?
I see where he's going to, but at the same time, people are just going to do wild caught if it's only $20, where I can get 2 of those if one passes, no big deal. Or I can buy the one for $46. Like how are you going to prove that it's captive bred?
That's a good, because you're going to prove that it's captive bred by going on YouTube channels and talking about them and getting some credibility. I don't know. Not that you're going to get anything from our show, but
it's a very fine line.
It is a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about that question, Frank,
I came back and said, good point.
Yeah, very, very good point. When we talk about that question, I look at, when we first started breeding Picta, why am I charging $50 or $60 for an adult Picta, period, or a Picta, where these are on this table and that table, and they all have them for 35, but mine are captive bred. Yeah, so I'll buy 2, and instead of the 1. So that's a hard sell until you get your name out, until you get some credibility, until you are the Blue Death Feigning Beetle queen of the beetle person, and I think marketing goes a long way with that. And Frank, you could do the same thing, but you would be obviously king of the Blue Death thing. I don't know where I'm going with that.
Neither do I.
Stinky is saying this is a really good point. I've killed off a pod colony by, adding a bunch of leaves I thought were clean. Being fully transparent, I'm kind of veering off the subject here. I apologize, but I killed off probably a dozen or more isopod colonies by getting substrate from somebody and changing all of my isopods over to that substrate. So at one time without testing it first in one. So number one, we all do silly things. Number two, practice self-forgiveness and move on and learn from your mistakes. That's my point.
Hi, DEA.
Hey, Andrew,
Well,
how are you doing?
To be honest, maybe it's longer than that. Probably 8 years ago, 6 to 8 years ago, somewhere around that. Someone gave me some African soft furs to start breeding for them because I couldn't find any. I'm like, well, I don't have any. I can't help you out. Like, he's like, what if I get you some? Will you breed them for me? I'm like, sure. I didn't quarantine them. I just stuck them right out to my rodent shed. They had mites.
Bad? Oh,
Mites.
no. Oh.
You ever had to give a rat a bath?
Nope.
Yeah,
it's
interesting. And actually trying to like treat them for mites, yeah, not fun. I actually shut my shed down for 2 months. So I took care of that issue.
I cannot imagine 2 months. That's maybe not that bad, really. You know, when you think about how big of a problem, because you're probably not going to catch it until it's just widespread, right?
It was pretty bad. But I was open with the people that were buying rodents that they were rodent mites, not snake mites, so they won't affect your snake. But I would only do frozen thawed after 2 months. So that means whatever, if anything was on that rodent, is already gone, passed away. But if you frozen thawed, if you see something floating, that's what it is.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't. Did you catch it, or were you selling at the time? And did I hate to say it like this, Tanya?
No, we caught it. I had a rodent pest, and we will clean the cage. And my husband's like, "What's on this?" Because I couldn't figure out why I wasn't doing good with the African soffers. Like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Well, they had mites on them, so the mites were affecting them, causing them to pass. Because I didn't know any better. I don't I move my rodents, but it's not like I'm sitting there and I'm petting them and
right.
Like, so yeah. That was a very hard thing to learn. I don't think I've added new blood to my rodents in like 5 years.
We all go through it, folks.
Yeah.
We all go through it. If you're small time, if you're big time, if you're in the middle, you're going to make mistakes. Let's learn. Let's move on. I'm looking for other questions here. I mean, I'm trying to think of, you've covered all of the questions that I've had. If you were to start off, let's say, Tanya, you heard this person talking on the Supreme Gecko live show about Blue Death Feigning Beetles, and you're going to go buy your first ones. What are some of the things? We've talked all about care and breeding and everything, but how about a couple of pointers? What should people be looking for or trying to avoid, or, just a couple of tips?
What I would look for is I would look for a company or breeder or anything. Look at the care they do their animals. Look at, if you go to an expo and this table has a bucket of Blue Death Beetles and they have snakes and lizards and everything else, look at the other animals. Look to see what they look like. Because if they're taking care of those animals, the more likelihood of them taking care of the Blue Death Beetles, even if they're all wild caught, it's a fair chance that they're still taking care of them. They're just not going out back, grabbing a bucket, throwing them in, and taking them to the show. If you look around and they have some iffy kind of items and you don't really get a good feel, I would walk away.
Bail hard. Yes. What a great point. We go to these large reptile shows, and I'm not going to name any names, but we see these large, not breeders, but vendors, and you see hundreds and hundreds of cups of different animals. What a great point. So I'm going to look for an African fat tail because they have 23 different cups of African fat tails. First, I'm going to look at all their other animals to see how they look. What a great point.
Well, this last weekend, I was walking around. I don't think the vendor realized what I was trying to get at. It looked like he took a deli cup like this and shoved a snake in it where like it was bowing because the snake was so big. The snake had no room to move. Why wouldn't you just keep that snake in a tub? Like, bring it out so people can look at it, but you don't need to shove it in a deli cup. They are living beings. Like, they need room to stretch. We all know that's not the cage. Like, we know this as people that keep reptiles. But again, they're still in that cup 5, 6, 8 hours.
Or if it's a 3-day show, they're probably in that same flipping cup for 3 days
or more.
Because I looked over, I'm like, oh, she looks like she went bust at the seams. Oh. He's like, oh yeah, she likes to pop the lid off. Well, that's telling me she doesn't have enough room. Like, so yeah.
Andrew, I completely agree. And I think that I want to say this the right way. Sometimes it's the shows. Sometimes it's not the breeders. Sometimes it's the shows. To your point, what you're saying is the people that are running it. And I should be now wearing a scaled up shirt, but we're very fortunate in Wisconsin that we have a couple of great sponsors, show sponsors that do fantastic jobs with that. Will you see different things maybe kind of like that? Maybe, but it's going to be rare. But it's up to the show to kind of police that. And I think that here in Wisconsin, we have some great shows that do that.
Angry just mentioned also, sometimes the newcomers don't know that that's not their home, or that's not how you keep the animal either. And that's a good point.
Oh my gosh. I have a horror story for you about crusted geckos, and I am not going to go there. No, my gosh. I can't even. Wait for a minute while I throw up. Okay.
Angie has a question.
Yes, I'm sorry. I've been wanting to get to Angie's question. How many beetles to start a colony?
I actually started with 6. Me.
2? Can you start with 2?
As long as it's male and female.
Juvenile or adult?
Then that's asking juvenile or adult, or it doesn't matter.
Well, they all become adults when they pupate, so.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not awake.
I'm not either. I'll wake up at 11:30 when I start scrolling through TikTok. What I was just going. I had another. Folks, if you have questions here, we're kind of wrapping it up real quick. We've had Tanya for a long time. If you have questions, put them in right now for sure.
How do you tell the difference?
Oh, there you go. Good question, Angie. How do you tell the difference between a male and a female?
So if you look at their antennas, the males actually have hairier antennas than the females do.
Okay. Well, that's easy enough. Okay, so we're going to do this again. And I'm going to see if there's any chance at all we can see. So if you were to take a guess, would you call this one a male or female? Can you see that?
Just because they're really thick, I'm going to assume the male just by the picture.
Okay.
I usually sometimes have a couple in my hand going like, so.
I'm going to see if I can get a better. Okay, here we go. Here's a good picture. You can tell right when they're hatched out, right? Hatched out? I guess hatched is right.
I've actually never really looked at them when they're hatched out.
Because it doesn't matter at that time, really.
Yeah.
What do you think about this one? Can you see that one? I know it's hard.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot here, and I apologize.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm going to remove that. I'm going to see if I have another better picture. Probably not. Probably not. Okay, this is maybe if I can get it.
Yeah, because if you look, like that looks pretty hairy. Like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the females,
it's smoother.
Very smooth. Okay, perfect. And the boys have a beard. I don't know. I don't. Without going into any bad jokes here, we're just going to go with that.
Hairs at the
I
tip.
do think you can tell by the butts, but I've never been very good at that. So
Okay. Frank is saying females have hairs at the tip of the antenna, and males have it going all along the antenna. Okay. Cool.
Frank's a very smart guy.
Frank is a very smart guy. He's smart with just across the board. Very impressive. Folks, any other questions? Any other final tips, Tanya, as far as care or breeding?
Do the research from where they're from. Think about where they're from, the weather, humidity, rain, what will they eat? Because like with the Blue Death Beetles, they're not going to come across a strawberry patch in the middle of the desert. So they're not going to be wanting to eat strawberries. But, that's why they get most of the water and everything from the protein, the dead stuff, everything like that. Give them a little treat here and there, but we all like our ice cream.
or Chips Ahoy cookies.
Those are good too.
Or
And ice cream.
candy that I've been eating all night.
Nanette, and not sharing a one. I'm going to see if I can pull this picture up here.
These are foreign language messages.
I feel like I'm Mr. Technical here now, Frank, because you just
literally
just sent this over, and now we're going to take a peek at this. Hopefully, people can see this. Thank you, Frank.
That's really good.
That is a really good picture.
It
really
is. Good. Yeah, because I usually have to have them in my hands, and I'm looking at them. So.
Wow, fantastic!
Did I not send you that video of them eating?
You know what? Let me show you that. Show that right here. Let me remove that.
Cool.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing terrible with the pictures here.
These
Angie,
hearts have foreign language messages.
I can't think and click at the same time, Nanette.
They are from the West United States and parts of Mexico.
So these are eating. What is? So it looks like a mealworm. And what else is that one eating?
I think it's a dog food treat.
Dog food treat.
Yep.
Looks like what I give Daryl.
It looks like the meatballs that you put on spaghetti. Oh, I'm just kidding.
You won't be eating this next week, will you?
Nope. I'm gonna see if I can do this.
You want some Valentine hearts? Because that's all you got.
Video. I'm going to do one more here real quick. Okay, everybody cover your eyes if you're not 18 or older.
This was actually from this morning in my quarantine tank.
Oh.
All I can think of is giggity goo.
They're playing like your mother would say.
Oh, chicka-wow.
You had to go there?
I had to go there. I almost missed those. Thank you for reminding me that you sent those. What I'm looking for other questions here.
If I had an established culture of these, would it be possible to add some of these to my chameleon enclosure?
That's the question I was going to ask that I forgot. Can you add other animals to your Blue Death Feigning Beetles enclosure?
I have seen on the internet where people have stuck other desert beetles and bugs with them. I just keep my guys with themselves. I don't do anything else with them. I can't actually remember if I seen anyone use them as a cleanup crew or anything, but I wouldn't think they'd be a good cleanup crew.
No.
I would think there would be better options. I'm just thinking of what other I don't know, scorpions or millipedes would probably not be a good addition, right?
No, what were they?
Scorpions do good, and some
Vinegaroons. Yep.
See, Frank's a smart guy.
I tell you. Oh.
Velvet ants.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking of ants, but I'm like, I know they're not fire ants. Like,
Yep.
They wouldn't eat those though.
The fire
No.
ants,
No,
or
they wouldn't eat ants.
the beetles would not eat ants.
Right.
I don't think
Okay.
so. I think Russ keeps velvet ants in with his blue death feigning beetles.
Other related ironclad beetles.
There you go. Good
there
call.
you go. Yep.
Good call. I used to say desert hairy scorpions, but the scorpions will become a snack.
Right,
When
when
they
they
molt. Not suggested. Good call.
Female wasps.
Velvet ants
Wingless.
and female
Wingless
wasps.
Hmm.
I'm learning so much. This has been great. Any other questions, folks? And while we're waiting for other questions, yes, they do have very, very powerful stings.
Ooh.
I think they're talking about the
wasp.
wasps and the velvet ants.
Okay.
Tanya, tell us about how people can contact you, and if they're looking for. Let's see if I can.
Frank will throw something up there.
Yeah,
soon.
Frank, you have a link if I'm not mistaken, correct?
He did earlier. He had it
Go
up
ahead and
there.
throw that up. And Tanya, could you just kind of mention?
Don't throw up. Just put the link up.
Thanks, Nanette. Could you please mention how people can contact you?
There it is.
So you can reach me on Facebook. Either my name, Tanya Habel, or the Rodent Shed. I do have a Facebook page now for the Rodent Shed. I just started that a couple months ago because it was just kind of by word of mouth of what I had. So
Perfect. And what reptile shows are you doing?
I'm just kind of doing the scaled up show right now. Because I'm slowly starting to do shows. My friend Austin and Katie, we are going to start sharing a table because we both don't have enough quite to fill up a table.
Perfect.
So but this year I should have sand boas. I should have bull snakes. And hopefully next year I can have some false water cobras. So I'm growing up my male right now. My female's big enough, but the male I was going to use passed away. So
that's tough when you have a breeding project and you're ready to start it and you lose one of the adults. That's super tough.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yep.
Well, this has been a wonderful show. I have tons of. I'm going to rewatch it. Absolutely, because there's so much information in here. I hope everybody that joined here, thank you very much for joining. I hope you learned a lot. We got one more question. We're going to finish up with this question. And it is, what's the smallest size container I could do a respectable natural enclosure for a tiny small culture of these? I have a small space and can't let my wife find any new bugs. Outstanding.
I would say even if you would get 6, I would still want to put them in a 10-gallon tank. I really would. I find they do so much better in a bigger space than if you cram them in something small.
Yeah.
That way that you can have a wet section, a drier section. They know where their food is. Sometimes I feed in a dish. But sometimes I'll scatter dry mealworms in different areas so they can scavenge.
Okay.
Perfect. I agree, Alexander, 100%. This was a great show. Tanya, thank you so much for coming on. Lots of great information. Thank you for coming on and sharing so much about these Blue Death Feigning Beetles. You said you weren't an expert. Tons of information in this video. Tons of information. Folks, when you're ready to, if you haven't started keeping Blue Death Feigning Beetles and you want to start, come back to the video and rewatch. I know I'm going to. I'm going to go to the next show looking for Blue Death Feigning Beetles. And I'm not going to tell my wife that I got them either.
She won't know. I won't tell her.
There you go. It's probably going to cost me $5 or something. No. Thank you very much, Tanya.
Well, what's one more animal? They won't know.
Exactly. That's what I say, but I've said that now 58 times. So
there's no space.
We don't.
I don't even think you have room for a 10-gallon tank or
I'll
anything.
find room
No,
in our room, in our bedroom, right
No,
next to the
we're-
TV.
no.
On that note, Tanya, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Loved
you.
having you.
Bye now.
Bye
Good night,
bye.
everybody.
Good night.